Today is Friday, September 1st. Obviously, I am not in the building this morning. And so this is the video that you're going to watch. And let me kind of explain what our objective is today. And then I'll sort of walk you through what's in your folder. And then we'll get started. So the objective today is that you are going to finish learning about the different lobes in the brain, as well as the cerebellum and the brain stem. As far as the activities, I have this video lesson where you're going to finish taking the notes. And then afterwards, you should have plenty of time. I have a kinesthetic activity, and I'll talk about that in a minute, in which you're going to practice taking your vocab test. And like I said, I'll explain that here in just a second. Your homework, it's a 3-day weekend. I know the last thing in the world you're going to want to do is take 5 or 10 minutes every single day to study your vocab, but I promise you, it will pay off if you just take those little couple minutes as you're brushing your teeth, maybe as you're eating breakfast, as you're just kind of hanging out for 5 minutes. I want you to just study your vocab. Something I wanted to talk about too is we have so many people who are oral learners, and I have you've made flashcards. If you're an auditory processor, then make sure you're saying these things out loud. Give them to your parent or a brother or sister or somebody, a friend, and read them out loud. You need to process them out loud. You need to hear those definitions and you need to hear the terms. Don't forget to do that. You could record yourself this weekend if you wanted to. Use your iPad and record yourself. Something that I've had kids do in the past is just record their voice where they say the term and then they pause for a long moment, and so that they can try to say the definition, and then on the video they'll say the definitions to check to see if they were right. Does that make sense? Just mess around with it, see what works best for you. All right, so like I said, you all are watching this video first. I am going to have you pause the video, maybe even close out of it and open up a new tab. And I'd like you to watch this video here that just introduces the parietal lobe. It is a good video, kind of like what we were talking about, the videos that we used yesterday, just to introduce the occipital lobe and the temporal lobe. There's just so much information. I can't possibly begin to tell you all of it. And so go ahead and take a minute, pause this video, watch that one, and then come on back and finish watching. Okay, so the parietal lobe is amazing. Our whole brain is just absolutely blows my mind, right? So your parietal lobe, we're going to color this green. The parietal lobe, we're going to color please make sure that you're filling in this area here for parietal lobe. We're going to color in the lobe in the center, and then go ahead and color the lobe in the brain, and then make your connection. Pause this video until you've done that, and then go ahead and hit play and keep going. All right, so the parietal lobe, if you were practicing, you're going to say your frontal. So remember frontal fever. So your whole hand goes sideways on your forehead. Make sure that pinky is right about at your eyebrows. And then you're going to come straight back and do your occipital lobe. Then bring your two hands over to the temporal lobes. Your fingers, your pointer finger will be on your ear, and then your pinky will be touching your temple. And now we're at the parietal lobe. And so you're going to put both hands then directly on top of your head. You can even lace your fingers in between each other and just leave them on the top of your head. This is the parietal lobe. The parietal lobe controls your body orientation. So you know you're laying down, you know you're sitting up, you know if you're upside down. I sense and process sensations. So the parietal lobe is where our 5 senses are understood, processed. So we receive sight through the occipital lobe. It's further processed in the temporal, but then it is finished kind of in the parietal. The parietal is a huge receptor for touch. Okay. So when you feel a bug crawling on your arm, that would be the sensation that you would be interpreting in your parietal lobe. I interpret visual and auditory information. Again, you guys, these lobes are not this simple. It's not just that, but I'm just pulling out the main things. It's important that you understand that visually, your visual comes from all three lobes. The only one that does not process visual is your frontal cortex. Auditory information is also processed here, as well as the temporal. I help you know your left from your right, up from down. So that whole body orientation. What's funny is some people still have trouble with left and right. And one of the things that I remember teaching my kids when we were little to remember your left from your right is if you stick out your left fingers, your left hands, and then you make the loser sign, the L sign, that's your left because that's L. So yeah, left and right. Yesterday during guided study, some of you guys are in this class and you were in my guided study, but just, I was thinking about the parietal lobe and I was thinking about just how our body is oriented and how we get used to doing things. Like when you cross your legs, do you end up crossing your right leg over your left leg or your left leg over the right leg? Does it matter to you? Do you always kind of do one more than the other? Do this for me while you're watching the video. I want you to just put your hands out and clasp your hands like you were pleading for something. And I want you to notice, are you putting your left thumb on top of your right, or is your right thumb on top of your left? And as you're sitting there with your hands clasped, I want you to open your fingers and shift them so now you're clasping your hands a little bit differently than what you normally would. Isn't that a weird sensation? I kind of had a feeling yesterday that maybe as you clasp your hands, whether it's right thumb over left or left thumb over right, maybe that had something to do with, if you're a right-handed or left-handed. And it really didn't seem, just based on the very, not professional data that we were getting, just pretty informal data that we were collecting yesterday in guided study. It doesn't seem to matter. It seems that it doesn't matter if you're right-handed or left-handed, depending on where you put your thumb. Anyway, really interesting, fascinating. If you put your hands behind your head to kind of do that resting motion, is your right hand on top of your left or left hand on the top of your right? And it's just a matter of comfort for you, but like how did you know to do it that way in the first place? And it's different for each person, and it's just interesting. So interesting. All right, so I process math, reading, and languages. When we talk about trying to learn how the brain learns, these complex processes, math, reading, and your language, this all is taking place in the parietal lobe. So super, super interesting. And then I'm responsible for your sense of touch, including pain, pressure, and temperatures. Remember when we talked about the touch pain being faster, or not touch pain, about the touch signals being faster than the pain signals. And then I think there was one slide where we were talking about, okay, now which one of the senses is actually fastest? And it's your sense of hearing. I hope now, after you know the pathway that these different sensations, kind of the nerves have to take the impulses of these different sensations. I hope now that you know that, you can understand maybe why hearing is faster than visual. Even though light travels faster than sound, it does not take a direct path in your brain. And so maybe that's why it takes a little bit longer. I don't know. I'm just guessing. I think that's a good conclusion. All right, next is the cerebellum. Now, the cerebellum is not part of the cerebrum. Remember, we talk about the cerebrum. In fact, let me do this really fast. if I was there with you right now, I would come back to this slide and I would hold up my little plastic brain and I would say, remember, this is the cerebrum. It's including all four lobes. And then we have the cerebellum. There are two sections of the brain. And this brain stem we're including in our notes, but it is not a part of the actual brain proper. So let's talk about the cerebellum. The cerebellum, we're going to write the word cerebellum and then go ahead and highlight that blue. And the cerebellum, you can always tell, is much more dense than the other brain, the cerebrum. It's really wrinkled, but that is because it's so dense. And then, of course, go ahead and draw that line connecting what you're drawing there and your location of that cerebellum in the diagram. Okay, so the cerebellum coordinates voluntary movements, including speech. So if you remember, the frontal lobe also is responsible for speech and for speaking. This is more the voluntary movements, including speech. So the movements of your lips and your tongue and your mouth, your jaw, when you're actually speaking and formulating the words. Because if you think about it, we're speaking English, and your tongue, your mouth, your teeth, all of those have to be in certain positions in order for you to make the sounds that are the words that are English. And if you think of different languages and how their position of the mouth, tongue, lips is different. And so then, when you try to recreate a new language that you're learning, you may have an accent because you're not used to putting your mouth and tongue and lips in the position that it's supposed to be in order to pronounce it correctly. It's hard. It's something that you really, really have to work at. It's not just enough to know the words, but you have to be able to pronounce them so that people can actually understand you. You don't have such a thick accent that you can't pronounce it very well. Can you hear my dog? Hey. Shh. She decided to jump up on the bed with a bone, and oh my word, she's loud. Just a second. Hey, quiet. All right, so the cerebellum creates smooth and balanced motor activity. I talked to you guys when we first started talking about the brain, and I shared with you about Geo and how he's we're doing some exercises with him because he's just really jerky in his movements, and he shouldn't be by now. By almost 8 months old, he should be smoother in his movements. And so it makes me wonder if this is where his problem lies, is that his cerebellum is not as fully functioning and developed as what it should be at 8 months. And the only way there's nothing wrong with him. There's nothing physiologically wrong with him. So it's just a matter of practice. And so we just have to keep trying. The cerebellum regulates and coordinates one's movement, posture, and balance. You're able to sit up straight and not even have to think about that because of your cerebellum. You're able to stand up straight and not think about it because of the cerebellum. You're able to stand up on one foot, and you might be a little wobbly. Some of you are better at it than others. But your sense of balance is right here in the cerebellum. Your posture, being able to stand up straight. And then just coordinating the movements of, even like think about jumping rope, or think about running, think about playing chess. And you have to, that's a fine motor skill when you're trying to move those pieces on the chessboard. Senny, I'm thinking of you when you're doing your Rubik's Cube. That coordination of the movement as you're turning that, even though it's so fast, you have to coordinate, or else you go too far and then you have to back yourself up. The cerebellum is responsible for fine motor skills. So this is being able to thread a needle. This is putting puzzle pieces in the right spot. being able to, Lakin has puzzles and she loves working on puzzles, but she gets frustrated sometimes if she has a hard time sticking those exactly, and she puts the puzzle piece right on top of the opening, and if it's just off just a little bit, it doesn't go in, and so she's still working on her fine motor skills. She got a toy for her birthday, and it's these little plastic caterpillars, and they're different colors, so like red, blue, green, yellow. And then she got tweezers that coordinate with the color, so she's got like yellow tweezers, and then she has cups that coordinate with those colors too. And so what the idea is to teach her color and fine motor skills. You tell her, okay, take the yellow tweezers, pick up the yellow plastic caterpillar and put it in the yellow cup. So that's a great game. I love that game, and maybe you guys have seen things like that as well. And the cerebellum is often returned to as a little brain, and here's why. This is super interesting. So although it's only about 10% of the whole brain, the size of the whole brain, it actually contains half of the neurons. It's that dense. And so many of those neurons are concentrated right there in the cerebellum. I just think that's fascinating. You need all of those in order to help yourself with all of these fine motor skills and balance and posture and speech and everything else. Pretty cool. Okay, so let's move on. Now we've got the brain stem. The brain stem is purple. So go ahead and write brain stem. And I'm going to tell you something I noticed. Remember I told you that we've got spelling issues in my family? I do. Brain stem is actually one word. And so I'm just bringing that to your attention because we talked about it yesterday. And so make sure that you are writing that brain stem, one word. Go ahead and color that purple. And then color the part in the diagram purple, and let's draw a line connecting the two. All right, so the brainstem, we're only going to talk about three things. The brainstem is incredibly complex. There are three different areas of the brainstem, or different parts of the brainstem. And I wanted to find a video to show you guys, but quite honestly, they were all incredibly complex and talking about these different, sections of the brain. And it's very complex. So I'm just going to go ahead and just give you these notes, and then we'll move on, okay? So the brainstem coordinates voluntary movement, including, what is happening? Voluntary movements, including what? Oh boy, hang on one second. Sorry, this is what happens when you go to record and you have no idea what's going on. Wait, there we go. Including, oh, this thing is behind here. Well, your brainstem is part of voluntary movements. I don't know why. Let's just say voluntary movements, and we'll take out this including part. And I'm going to look that up a little bit this weekend, and I'll come back and give you guys some more information about that. Okay, sorry about that. All right, so I coordinate voluntary movements. Now, number 2 says I automate functions of the body. I think actually, now you guys, I'm so sorry. Here's what I'm looking at. I'm looking at your notes, and it says number 1, I connect. And I think what that's supposed to be is I connect, not I coordinate. And I am not going to start this video all the way over just so that I can correct this. The brainstem connects the spinal column, spinal cord to the brain. And now that I'm looking at that, I think that was my mistake. So sorry. Hope you guys got that revision. All right, so I connect the spinal cord to the brain. I automate functions of the body. So I highlighted the word automate and I left a definition there. If something is automated, that means it's done on its own. You're not controlling it. So when they say that the brainstem automates different functions, it means that these are involuntary movements. It's not anything that you can control, that you have to think about doing. It just happens. So your heart rate, your breathing, your body temperature, your sleep and wake cycles. This is automated by the brainstem. You waking up and having this like awake and sleep cycle does not, there's a place inside the inner brain called the hypothalamus, and there is some sleep function in there, but the sleep and wake cycle would be isolated here in the brain stem. Your digestion is actually like not monitored, but regulated by your brainstem. Is that weird? Like stuff going on with your stomach and your colon, your small and large intestines, all of that is actually with your brainstem. And if you jump down, see where it says digestion? You've got sneezing and coughing. Those are automatic and they come from the brain stem. And vomiting comes from the brain stem. And so here's the thing. A lot of times if you're sick with the flu, your brain interprets a sickness or an illness and then it's like, get rid of it, right? If you get food poisoning, your brainstem receives the signal from your stomach that, hey, something's not right here. There's a lot of bacteria. And then it's like there's an invader in your body. And the brainstem is what causes you to vomit, not anything in your actual brain. And then your swallowing reflex, your ability to swallow. Now, damage to your brainstem would cause a damage to all of these different involuntary movements. And so you can see, depending on how high up the damage occurs, that's where these different movements originate. So the higher up it is on the brainstem, the more devastating and probably life-threatening that it would be. So that's interesting. And then number 3, I can cause brain death with serious injury. Okay, so that's it for the notes here. I'm going to have you guys now, I promised you that I would show you a YouTube video. And I'm going to try this. Let's see. Optical, what am I doing? Here it is, optical illusion ballerina. So I'm going to show you this video, and hopefully
if it wasn't for Grammarly Go, putting our website together would have taken so
hopefully it translates while you're watching the video. But here's what I want you to see. So if you remember, we talked about in the occipital lobe, you have your depth perception. So just watching this dancer, is she spinning clockwise or counterclockwise? And can she change? It's so funny. Oh, she just changed for me. And I don't know why. So now she's going counterclockwise for me. And sometimes, especially if I focus down on her toe, the one that's sticking out, I can almost make it even look like it's swinging back and forth. Okay, now she's going clockwise again. Now, it's hard, and some of you guys may not be able to switch back and forth, and that's okay because remember, this is just a silhouette. There's no light or shadow, so we don't get any sort of a depth perception at all from this. I'm going to let this play out just a little bit longer. Try and really make it. Sometimes if you blink or if you look away and then come back, sometimes that works better. Let me come back here just a second. That was weird. Somebody took the time to add these highlights, and I want to show you this. I don't want that. Okay. Is this an actual thing? Oh, sorry. Oh, you guys, I'm having such trouble. I want to see this. This is what I want to see. All right, let me blow this up. I thought that other one was just an ad. All right, so somebody has added lines to indicate the different parts of her body to help you see if she's forward facing or backwards facing. And this will help you identify. Okay, so look at in the middle is what you guys saw to begin with, right? And then if you flip your eye back and forth, left to right, you're going to be able to see and make her move depending on where, especially look at her foot. And if as she's going out to the side, switch your eye over to the next one and she'll mimic that one. Isn't that amazing? I think that's so cool. And so then if you keep doing that, you can train your eye so that you don't have to look at each one of them and you can just make her legs swing back and forth. They used to say that this was like if you're left brain, you saw one. If you were right brain, you could see the other. And I don't know if that's necessarily true. There's a lot of research that's been done about left brain, right brain, and strengths and weaknesses and whatever. But this is just pretty cool. What this demonstrates is that some of us are it's easier for some people to overcome this optical illusion. And it would be interesting when I come back on Monday or when I see you guys again, I'm going to ask you, how many of you were able to see her move both ways? And if you were, are you a visual learner? All right, very good. So here's what I want you to do now. I want you to go see Mr. Thayer and where is this? Right here. Get your practice test. I do not want you to do a practice test by putting this in good notes. I want you to actually pen and paper write it down, because a kinesthetic way of practicing for a test is actually practicing the test. And so I want you to complete your practice test the way that you would complete the test that you're going to take from me for real. So no notes, do not help each other. You are absolutely quiet. Once you go through and you fill out as many of these as you can, and hopefully you're going to do really well. But if you have any that you're not sure on, then when you're finished, and this is very important, I want you to take a different color pen or pencil and go back in and make corrections, make revisions. Even if, let's say, you completely forget what one of these words is, I want you to change the color and then write that definition in. So brain research shows that when you are making revisions, if you do it with a different color, then you're more likely to help move that information to long-term memory. Okay, hang on to these. I want to see what you've got when we get back on Monday. All right, you guys, have a great weekend. I'll talk to you later.